When I look back on that night, I can't help but realize how quickly trust can shift and how complicated people can be. My dad, John Miller, has always been a man who valued loyalty above everything else. He grew up in a small town in Kentucky where a handshake meant more than any signed contract, and he carried that sense of integrity with him into adulthood. His best friend, David Carter, was almost like family to us. My dad had known David since they were in middle school. They played football together, worked their first jobs together, and even stood beside each other at their weddings. To me, David was like an uncle I never officially had. He'd been around for so many barbecues, Christmas dinners, and summer trips to the lake that it felt like he was part of our family. It all started one Friday evening in late spring. Dad was scheduled to work the night shift at the factory, and my mom had taken a last-minute trip to help her sister in another state. That meant I would have been alone at home, and my dad didn't feel comfortable leaving me by myself. "Emma," he said, looking at me with his serious dad face, "I need you to stay at David's tonight. He's got the space, and I trust him completely. I don't want you home alone." I didn't argue. I was 17 at the time, a high school junior, and though I wasn't a little kid anymore, I knew better than to fight about it. Besides, I had always felt comfortable around David. When Dad dropped me off, David greeted us at the door with his usual big smile. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of presence that filled a room.
"John,
"You know Emma's always welcome here," he said, clapping my dad on the back. After Dad drove off, David turned to me and said, "Come on, kiddo, let's get you settled in." David's house was warm and inviting. He lived alone since his divorce a few years back, but he kept the place tidy. The living room smelled faintly of pine, and a stack of books sat on the coffee table next to a bowl of mixed nuts. His golden retriever, Buddy, wagged his tail and leaned against my legs as if he'd been waiting just for me. David had set up the guest room for me, with fresh sheets and a little nightstand lamp glowing softly. "You can hang out wherever you like," he told me. "I'll be in the kitchen if you need anything." At first, it felt like a sleepover at a relative's place. We ordered pizza, and David let me pick the movie. We ended up watching an old comedy, the kind my dad loved, and for a while it felt normal, even fun. David wasn't just my dad's best friend. He was funny and easy to talk to. He asked about school, my plans for college, and even gave me some advice about staying true to myself when I mentioned the pressure of fitting in. But as the night went on, I began to notice things I hadn't before. David seemed quieter than usual. At one point, while we were sitting in the living room, he sighed and stared at the TV without really watching it. "You know," he said softly, "life doesn't always turn out the way you plan. But sometimes the people who are there for you, they end up meaning more than anything." His words hung in the air, and though they didn't seem directed at me, something in his tone felt heavier than usual. Later, when I got ready to head to bed, I found myself lying awake in the guest room, listening to the faint creaks of the house. Buddy scratched at my door until I let him in, and the sound of his slow breathing eventually helped me drift off. But somewhere in the middle of the night, I woke up to hushed voices in the hallway. At first I thought I was dreaming, but then I recognized David's voice. He was talking on the phone, and though he was speaking quietly, the house carried every sound. "Yeah, John," he said, "she's safe here. Don't worry. You can always count on me." It struck me then just how much trust my dad had placed in his best friend. I rolled over, hugging the blanket close. For the first time, I realized that trust wasn't just about promises. It was about choices people made in moments when no one else was watching. I never once felt unsafe that night, but I did feel the weight of my dad's faith in his friend. The next morning, David made pancakes, the kind with chocolate chips in them, and set a plate in front of me with a warm smile. "Your dad used to beg me for these when we were kids," he chuckled. Over breakfast, he told me stories about him and my dad sneaking out to catch fireflies, getting into harmless trouble, and looking out for each other through thick and thin. For a while, I almost forgot why I was even there. But later that day, when Dad came to pick me up, I noticed the way he clasped David's shoulder and said, "Thanks, brother. I knew I could count on you." Something in me shifted at that moment. It wasn't about me anymore. It was about the bond between these two men who had stood by each other for decades. I realized that my dad's trust in David was more than just a practical decision. It was a reflection of a lifetime of loyalty, a friendship that had weathered storms, heartbreaks, and victories. That night at David's house didn't end with some dramatic twist. Nothing scandalous happened. What happened was something quieter, but just as powerful. I saw my dad's best friend not just as the man who told jokes at barbecues, but as someone carrying his own weight of loneliness, responsibility, and loyalty. I saw my dad's trust as something fragile and sacred, the kind of thing you don't just give away lightly. Over the years, I've thought about that night often. It taught me that trust isn't about being perfect, it's about being present, about showing up when someone needs you. David wasn't flawless. He was human, with flaws and regrets. But in that moment when my dad needed him, he showed up. Years later, when I went away to college, David was there at my going-away dinner. When my dad got sick for a time, David was the one who mowed our lawn and drove him to appointments. And when I graduated, both my dad and David stood side by side, beaming with pride. That night I spent at his house became just one small thread in a much larger tapestry of loyalty and family. Now, as an adult looking back, I realized that trust is one of the most valuable things we can give someone. My dad gave his to David, and David honored it. And for me, that night turned into a lesson I will carry forever, that sometimes the things that happen aren't dramatic events, but quiet revelations that shape the way you see the world.